it's your girl with the word. My name is Cara Celeste and I am here to start a beautiful YouTube channel. Now I've already filmed this twice and I realize I've learned a lot from my life, but I don't want to go into detail about it because that would be a really long video. If you really want me to go into detail about it, just leave a comment. Maybe one day I'll do it, who knows. But yeah, I want to start a YouTube channel where I just dive into the Bible and I learn all these things about such a very dense book that to a lot of people doesn't make sense, or people haven't even read it, but they look at the people who read it and those people aren't perfect, so they think the book isn't perfect because we hold everybody accountable to our rules that we follow. And so yeah, I think before we dive into that and I start a video, you guys who watch, the viewer, understand where I'm coming from. So this is my testimony, very brief testimony as to why I am a Christian. I was born to two Christian parents. Now before we truly understand me, I'm going to give a brief overview of my father and my mother because that's what was exemplified in front of me. My father. So my father is, doesn't like authority, is a rebel, was abusive, never had any broken bones. It wasn't like crazy abuse, but there's a lot of verbal and physical abuse. Very selfish man, but a very, very curious man, especially in the realm of psychology and wanting to understand the meaning of life. That is my father. My mother, very quiet, rule follower, breadwinner. She's a giver, so much of a giver that my father takes from my mother all the time. Kind of naggy. She just wants a good life. Also very curious as to what her personal meaning of life is and where she fits in the world, and just wants to do well by her children. And I love that. I love my dad too. My dad has taught me so many things that I don't want to be and so many things that I do want to be. And same with my mother. There are so many things that I don't want to be and so many things that I do want to be from her. And they got together. When I was in 4th grade, I asked my mom to get a divorce from my father because it was clear the two of them weren't getting along. And it was affecting me, my brother, and my sister. And so my dad would beat up on my brother. And the reason we got DFACS or CPS in our life was because my dad actually kicked my sister because she wouldn't get up one morning for school, and she went to the school and said she couldn't sit down in a chair because her butt hurt. And going to the nurse, they were like, oh, it's something rectal. And she's like, no, my dad just kicked me and it really hurts. I have a bruise on my butt. And so therefore is the genesis of DFACS in our life. Now, I say all that because I want people to know that I know what it feels like when a stranger comes in your home and tries to tell you how to live your life out, not biblically, but by law. I also want to let you know I know what it's like to sit in a room and have the thought that maybe after your parents' court case, you're not going to go home with the person who takes care of you. I also know what it looks like to see children who are being abused and get abused so badly that they decide that they also need to inflict that abuse on other people and other social people that they're trying to socialize with. I had never gone that personality transformation, but I saw it happen in other human beings. I was always trying, I think as an older child, the oldest child, I was always trying to be a truth seeker so that way I could come back home to my siblings and let them know this is how the world is and you should take it from me. My parents taught my Sunday school classes, which I think is kind of funny, but I think there's a relevancy to that because my parents allowed me to ask why in Sunday school. And I think that's a really important aspect of Christianity, is to ask why. In the New Testament, not only Paul, but Jesus specifically say in John, go and test the spirit, because if you don't test it, you'll never know if it's real or not. So I think sometimes, my parents never really sheltered us. They didn't even try. There were things I wasn't allowed to do, and there were things I was allowed to do. And at the end of the day, my mom was so stressed out because she's trying to, keep everybody in line, and then my dad doesn't care. So I was never really sheltered in a way. Like, I wasn't allowed to go to the mall, but I would secretly go to the mall with my friends. Like, I wasn't allowed to visit certain websites on the internet, but did it anyway. And I just learned a lot at such a young age. It was kind of weird. I'm also a curious human being like my dad, and being curious gets you into a lot of trouble. So transitioning into my high school career, 17 and 18 years old, a very detrimental year for most young human beings, because at 17 and 18 in the modern civilization, those are the years you're trying to figure out what you're going to do for the rest of your life, because this is a time where you have the option to move out of the house. At 18 years old in America, you become a legal adult. You can get arrested and tried as an adult. You're no more juvie. At 17, you can buy a lottery ticket. You can rent machinery at 18. Like, when I say machinery, I mean like a vacuum. Like, come on, let's be honest. They're not going to give you something that'll kill somebody. A car can kill somebody, let's be honest. You're an adult. Not only that, I think the biggest things that are happening in your life is you're making sacrifices for your future. Do I move out? Do I go to school? With going to school, that means I can move out. With not going to school, am I going to be willing to live with my parents and enter the professional world, or move out from under my parents and move into the professional world? It's all up in the air. It's also a time where we have to our bodies and our psychology are super honed in on socialization. So therefore, partying. How are you going to party? These are incredible times in a young human's life. At that point in my life, I was a Bible thumping Christian, and it took one human being that I thought was really cool, because I really liked the hippie movement during the late 60s, early 70s. So there's one person who fit that idea that I was super into, changed my entire world. I went from a Bible thumping Christian to questioning the role of Jesus Christ and God inside of my life, in the Bible in general inside of my life. To be explicit, there were a lot of things that happened. This person gave me mononucleosis, which hindered a lot of things. I remember I got a big leading role in a ballet, and the executive director of the dance school, who did all of that for free, her husband was a neurologist, and they knew a lot of doctors, and she got me a free mononucleosis test and a handwritten note to send to my school to let them know that the reason I was gone for a month was because I had mononucleosis. But during that time of mononucleosis, I would allow this person to come to our really crappy apartment to do things to me that at the time I was okay with, but looking back now were very bad, and that was my own fault because I allowed it to happen. But let's start back here at this. At 17 years old, I moved away from my family into a host family's house where I met one of my greatest friends, and I consider myself on my own. My parents aren't there. The people I owe all of my authority to weren't there, so I was on my own. The next year, they didn't take me back because they were moving in their foreign exchange student again, so I moved in with my grandparents an hour and 15 minutes away. Long story short, I couldn't get into high school, so my dad had to move up there with me and my brother in order for me to get into high school. My grandparents, for obvious reasons, these are my maternal grandparents, for obvious reasons, don't like my dad, so they kicked us out of the house. I lived in a homeless shelter. So here are a few other things that I do know about the world. I know what it's like to live in a homeless shelter that's bed bug ridden. I know what it's like to have to deal with drug addicts that live with you, and to watch them attempt to raise their children that they so oftenly forget about. So often, I don't think oftenly is a word, so often forget about. And I also know what it's like to have a parent who is so selfish that even though they're not doing drugs, even though they say they're a Christian, they only care about themselves. Who doesn't want a parent. I had no real parent watching over me when my grandparents kicked us out of that house. I was allowing myself to govern myself and do whatever I wanted. 17 and 18, that is the cusp of moving away from your parents and you deciding how you want to live your life. And my dad wasn't there for me and my brother. My brother would go over to the trailer park because I wasn't there either. I was at my dance school, or I was going around helping sell drugs and going over to my boyfriend's spiritual advisor's house instead of going to school, and watching them sell drugs and do drugs and get drunk, and just, we smoked a lot of pot. Like, that's the life I was living, and my brother was home alone. At the time, my brother was 14. He was in 8th grade. He would go over to the local trailer park and get high with kids' parents. I remember on graduation day, I was in AP classes. Don't ask me how I got through those. I went up to one of my harshest AP teachers, my AP Lit teacher. When I say harsh, I mean we had to take these tests each week. We had to come to school like an hour early, and we would take these tests, and we had to have a meeting for them. Every week we had to have these meetings. So she would grade our tests and she would tell us about them. And I remember one time she said, "I don't even know why you've wasted your money on this test. You cannot write. You can take my class, like, as long as you want, you can try and pass it, but you shouldn't take this test because you're really bad." And because of that, made me kind of jealous that somebody thought of me like that, and I worked harder, and that is honestly the only AP class that I got credit for in college. So I remember going up to her during graduation, and I apologized to her. I said, "I am so sorry that I took your class for granted. And I was so sorry in general to everybody that was so good to me in high school. I took them for granted as well." But she said, she hugged me, and she said, like, this one was harsh. Like, this was her stare coming into class every day. But that woman was smiling at graduation. She hugged me and she said, "I understand you were going through a hard time." And that made me think about living in the homeless shelter that was ridden with bed bugs, because we had bed bugs we had such a bad bed bug problem. That was such a humbling experience. When I moved back down to Georgia with my mom, we started going to church again, started this rebirth of having God in my life, because you reflect, that's the process of meditation and prayer, is to reflect on yourself, to confront your demon. You're talking with yourself constantly. That's the Holy Spirit. I remember just meditating on my past 2 years away from my parents and being like, my mom mainly, thinking, wow, I went down a really, really, really bad road. But through all of that, through that terrible storm, something was always in the back of my head telling me, still respect your authority even though you want to say it. Don't do drugs. Don't try psychedelics. The only drugs I've ever done are I've drank and I've smoked pot, and that's it. I don't even do those anymore. I was able to see what it did to people. I lost, in all honesty, not to be vulgar, I partook in sexual intercourse and lost my virginity to a really terrible person I'm not proud of. that doesn't mean that my life was over. I had something to work on. Jordan Peterson says it like this: when you want to start something, don't let that fear of knowing that you're going to be bad at it hinder you from doing it. You have to start somewhere. So if you do something, if you're starting something, start doing it horribly. Try your best, but just expect it to be horrible. Because you don't have a foundation until you know how bad you're going to be at something and know that you have room to grow. And my start to life was terrible. My freshman year of college, I finally got my first job. I was working with 2 ex-convicts, and I was all about listening. I wanted to listen to the old person. I wanted to listen to the person who had gone through struggles, because I didn't want to end up like them. But also just their stories were really entertaining. Like, it's fun to listen to somebody's troubles. And I know I used the verb or the adjective fun, but in a sense it really is the way people take a spin on their disparities, and they make it into almost a joke-like thing, is kind of enlightening. So I worked with these 2 ex-convicts who told me a lot about why they don't do the things that they do anymore. And going to prison is so life-changing. You are at the lowest of low, and I almost knew what that felt like, because my senior and mainly my senior year was like a rock bottom for me. I was in so much trouble with my parents, and my mom's view of me was everything, and I had ruined that. I couldn't be trusted anymore. And as a convict, you're in prison, you're not trusted. So they allow havoc and chaos to be reckoned on you, because that's what you were doing to society that was trying to be just and good and orderly. And it started making me think. I was going through college, and college is a great place where you start to really understand who you're becoming. And college at the time wasn't the institution that it is today. I was being introduced to teachers. I was like, oh, okay, you say you're giving the whole viewpoint, but you're really only giving one, and I don't really agree with it, but it's fine. I met so many people, but again, I started questioning God, and I wasn't reading my Bible, so I was going based off of what I saw other Christians doing, and I was really falling away from faith. I graduated college, and I was in the real world, and I didn't need my parents anymore, so I was doing my own thing. I was literally doing whatever I wanted. I was going out with guys all the time. I was going out to the bars. I was getting really, really to new realms. So after college, I was partying all the time. I was getting with guys, blah, blah, blah. Right into college, I was getting jobs with, I was getting the jobs I needed. I graduated with a bachelor's in dance. A lot of you might think that's a crazy degree. Don't get me wrong, I think it is too. But right after college, I was getting dance jobs. I was getting music video gigs. And not for the biggest people, but I was still getting gigs that I was looking forward to getting in college. And I was doing it right. I became a dance teacher almost automatically. I was doing the things that life was telling me in college that I needed to do. I started working with a local artist who is a gay, and I got connected with the gay community. So I was learning all these things about the gay community and how they view the world, and I started dancing for a very left-leaning this company people thought was a cult. And honestly, if you do your research and psychological research on the way cults work, this company was ran like a cult. And because I had so much free thinking, thank you mom and dad for that, and I was always able to ask why, and I was also being told that this was a democracy, that I had the autonomy to do whatever I wanted in a sense, but there's that respect factor to autonomy which allows you to survive. And so I couldn't have certain friends. I couldn't move a certain way in my dances or else I looked too dancey. I couldn't ask certain questions, which is when you hinder somebody's ability to ask why, that is a manipulative tactic. And that's what I went through the beginnings of my like real adult life outside of my parents' household. That was a scary time. And it all leads up to now in our nation. With what has happened, it really started making me reflect on God. And people starting to lose their job because of their Christian values. People starting to get ridiculed because they believe in the saying, all lives matter. That is why I started getting back into the Word. And I started really diving. And I started really praying, which I had never done before. Things were being revealed to me. And they were always sitting back here. And through all of this, through all of the knowledge God was able to give me through experience, through action, I can gladly say that I go to that Word and I trust every bit of it. Not only from my past experiences, but from my implementation of those experiences that I'm currently experiencing. This is such an important work. It is such an important piece of literature. And there are going to be people out there that are going to interpret it very, very, very badly. And that's what makes that scripture so important, because you can look at this individually and think for yourself. There's perception, which makes our personality. The two go hand in hand. All of our perceptions are going to be different, so therefore that is why we should be able to come together and talk about it as civil human beings and Christians. 1 Corinthians, it says that. We should be able to come together and have discussion. I just want to pray over this, and I hope I was able to enlighten you on some things, change your mind about some things, just because I look the way I look, or as you get to know me, do the things that I do. It's not because of a demographic that I have, it's because of my experiences. And I don't look at myself as an object living in space. I look at myself as a being who's doing something to space, and I'm doing it with a lot of other people who are doing as well. So please pray with me. God, you have given us this wonderful world, and despite the differences, you have made wonderful people who are capable of wonderful things. Allow us to see that though we can embody those chaotic, terrible things, just as much there is good in us that we can find, that we can establish for ourselves, but we have to establish it for ourselves. Let us go back to the mentality that we can talk to ourselves, we can look inside of ourselves, we can confront our demon and suppress it with you. You are an amazing God, and you sent an amazing blessing of Jesus Christ. To understand those stories and to wield that information for ourselves is so important. You're an amazing God. And don't ever let me forget that again. In your name we pray, amen. And I love you guys so much. Sorry you're getting to see a lot of me and who I really am. I'm a very emotional person. And I hope you're okay with that. So if you like this, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe, because we're only going to dig deeper into the Bible and its effects on the world and from my viewpoint. And if you want to leave a comment, please do so. That way I can get other viewpoints. And once you subscribe, if you want to keep hearing this, keep being a part of this discussion, please click that notification bell icon, and I will make sure everything everything is done in the power of God and for you all. And it's in your name. Oh my gosh, what am I saying? I gotta go. Bye-bye.